This presentation is on Nazi Germany and the various concentration camps. My name is Amber Young. This is a project for EDU 290, potentially for a world history class. It is approximated that the Nazis had 15,000 concentration camps throughout their occupied territories, which include France, Belgium, Poland, and Austria, and obviously Germany. Not all of them were death camps. Some of them were holding camps. Place in between. In this lesson, we're going to focus on some of the more bigger camps or well-known and the people who were held there. First, we're going to start with Auschwitz, Birkenau. It was an extermination and labor camp in Poland, and it was used from April of 1940 until January of 1945. The camp itself contained three major camps, which were Auschwitz I, or Stammlager, which was the main camp, Auschwitz II, or Birkenau, which was the extermination camp, and Auschwitz III, or Monowitz, which was the work camp. There were also 51 sub-camps. However, there's so many that I'm not going to list them here. The picture on the right says, "Labor makes you free," and that was a phrase used by Hitler. It's estimated that 2.1 to 2.5 million people were killed in Auschwitz, using methods such as the gas chamber, mass shootings, and getting rid of the bodies using the crematorium. The main camp was made to house 30,000 people, but on more than one occasion housed more than that. Occupants of the camp were men, women, children of Polish descent, Jewish descent, gypsies, or even communists. The prisoners arrived by train on the railroad that you see pictured on the right of the screen. When they arrived, they were registered, then tattooed, told to undress. Their bodies and hair and clothing were deloused. They were shaven of all body hair, men and women both, and then showered. Sadly, only 10% survived their arrival at Birkenau in 1942 and 1943. They were told to go to the bunkers, which were actually the gas chambers. And from January of 1942 to March of 1943, it's estimated that 175,000 people were gassed on this location. And from just January to March of 1943, it was estimated that 105,000 people were gassed. When the Allies liberated the camp, they found piles and piles of personal items such as shoes and clothes. It says that they found 836,525 items of women's clothing, 348,820 items of men's clothing, 43,525 pairs of shoes, and 460 artificial limbs, and also 7 tons of hair. Next, there's Treblinka, and on the right is the train station. Treblinka was established in 1941 as a forced labor camp. There were two camps. There was the main camp, and there was the extermination camp, simply called Treblinka I and Treblinka II. It was in Poland, and sadly, the thing it's most famous for is for the evacuation of the Warsaw Ghetto in July 23rd, 1942. There were originally 3 gas chambers, and they expanded to 6 gas chambers because there were not enough gas chambers to kill all of the people who were sent there. Some of those who were not killed gathered the personal items off the trains before they were sent back to the station, and they sent the personal items to Germany. In August of 1943, there was an uprising, and out of the 750 who revolted, only 70 made it to freedom. On the right, you see a picture of the remembrance stones, and there are 17,000 of them, and they represent towns, villages, and countries. The bigger the stone, the more people from that area. Next, there's Sybor in Poland. It was opened in March 1942, and there were 2 major camps with 3 parts. The first part was the administration, barracks, and storage. The second part was the extermination, and then the third part was burial and cremation. It was the second extermination camp in Action Reinhard, or Operation Reinhard, which is another way for saying the final solution. And on the right pictured is a map of the camp from the memory of an SS officer. In May to June of 1942, it's estimated that 100,000 people were murdered there. And from October 1942 to the spring of 1943, it's estimated that 70 to 80,000 Galician Jews were killed, 145 to 150,000 governmental Jews were killed, and historians say roughly 250,000 people were murdered there. There was an uprising in October of 1943 where 300 people escaped, but only 50 survived everything after trying to go through the minefields. The camp was liquidated in 1943 because the Allies were on their tail and the soldiers couldn't hold it anymore. On the right side of the screen, there's a plaque commemorizing the victims who fell there. And finally, there's Dachau. Dachau was opened in March 22nd, 1933, shortly after Hitler came to power as Chancellor. And it was used for political prisoners mostly. It was the first camp in Germany, and it was used as a prototype for all the other concentration camps that the Nazis built. It was occupied from 1933 to 1960, and on the right is a picture of what it still looks like today. It's the most preserved one. From 1945 to 1948, during the Nuremberg trials, it housed SS officers. And the camp's recorded intake of prisoners was 206,206, of which 31,951 died. It was the second camp to be liberated by the Allies. And between 1933 to 1945, historians believe that more than 3 million prisoners arrived there. On the gate, you see the famous Hitler saying of labor makes you free, because not only was it for political prisoners, it was also a forced labor camp. Most concentration camps today either don't exist anymore or have become museums. Auschwitz is now a museum and has been since 1947, shortly after the war. On the top left, you can see a picture of what it looks like today, and the buildings and the electric gates, fences that stand there still. There's also a plaque commemorating the victims. Treblanka was originally made into a farm after it was liquidated and given back to the Romanians. However, they didn't want it, because why would you want a farm there? Now that's just an open field with the tombstones I mentioned before, and under that big stone you see in the far back of the picture is a mass grave. Sybor became a memorial in 1961, as you see the plaques commemorating the poor victims who fell there in the bottom right of the screen. It's a memorial in a museum now. Dachau became a memorial site in 1965 after the prisoners who were held there that were still alive protested because all the other concentration camps had memorials and they didn't. You can now take seminars there, or you can take a tour of the grounds. This is a list of my sources. Aside from jewishgen.org, all of these are pictures, the websites from which I got the pictures from. You can also go to these websites and find out more information about the various camps. And that's the end of my lesson.